All right. So, first thing I want to talk about in regards to the um, is in regards to the paper that the sign up sheet's heading around to sign up for. So basically, it's only got to be about a page and a half long, not like a super long paper. The whole point of this is that we need to start acclimating you to what's expected in a academic research paper. The very first thing that's expected in an academic research paper is that you're actually going to use sources that are credible, the most credible sources that you can find for your source. And what that generally means is that you're not going to use Wikipedia, you're not going to use any website that's labeled .com or .net or anything like that. You want to try to find the best source for your paper that you can possibly find. So if you were writing, and sometimes that varies depending upon what you're writing about. So the highest and best of sources is what they call peer-reviewed journals, which means in every profession, law enforcement included, there are academic, like college professors and, and leaders in the field and stuff that are publishing studies that they've done. They're publishing, things, in professional journals for other people to read and learn about. So, if you're, for example, if you're working in corrections or whatever, there's journals that are publishing, what is kind of the latest stuff that they're trying as far as inmate management or dealing with what they call security threat groups or gangs in prisons and stuff like that. What's kind of the the latest trend in that regard, and what are these programs accomplishing? Are they successful? That kind of stuff. Those are the most credible sources that you can possibly find. Kind of second to that would be something that is not necessarily published in a journal, but something where, somebody's written like an actual published book or something like that, because at least there's some kind of a publisher that's kind of taking responsibility for this content. It's not just some blog on the internet, right? Somebody's put their name on it. Somebody's, convinced the publisher to publish it. And so it's rather credible. So like your textbook, your criminal justice textbook would be considered a credible source, even though it's not a journal article. Third kind of thing, it's more like an exception than it is really anything else, but anything that's published or authored by a government agency, we consider that to be credible, even though once in a while, government publishes something that isn't right, but nevertheless, compared with some blog on the internet, we tend to want to trust it. And sometimes for a lot of things, we have no choice. Like if we're wanting to know what the violent crime rate is, in a particular location or whatever, we don't have really anything other than government sources to figure that out, and even in these academic journals that I referenced and talked about, they're going to reference government sources a lot, especially in our field. A lot of the stuff that is relevant to criminal justice is going to be government sources. And that kind of brings me around to what we're writing about, which is landmark Supreme Court cases. And for landmark Supreme Court cases, there is no more direct and credible source than, well, the Supreme Court, the government, i.e. the government. So the best place I've found where they have it archived all the way back to, antiquity is the Library of Congress. They have the official transcript of all of the Supreme Court cases going way back. technically on the actual US Supreme Court website, you can access cases going back about 20 years, I think thereabouts, since they started publishing it online rather than in paper stuff. But a lot of the cases we're dealing with are older than that, so I'm directing everybody to Library of Congress. Get your transcript from Library of Congress website. I have found that if you search the name of your case and then put like LOC after it or something like that, it will bring that result to the top instead of you having to wade through to find it. And that's going to be your first assignment. Your first assignment is going to be to go online, find your complete transcript. And when I say complete transcript, I mean not a summary, not a case brief. Unfortunately, at least for some of the cases, even on Library of Congress, you can find briefs and summaries and stuff on there too. Especially if you choose like the Graham v. Connor case or something that's kind of nuanced. There will be a lot of they'll also on Library of Congress have some things that are on there that are like authored by the Department of Justice, like guidance on how to comply with this, that, or the other thing. Don't choose that. You want to find what you can. So if you go on whatever search engine that you prefer and you start to type in whatever the name of your case, and you just type it in, you'll notice the top result is Wikipedia. You don't want Wikipedia, and it's not that it's necessarily inaccurate information on there, but again, we're after the most direct source, the most credible source that we can find. And so I would say, if you were comparing the two, like Cornell University Law School is probably more credible than Wikipedia, right? And it would be an acceptable source, except there is a better one. And the better one would be an actual government source. So if we keep scrolling down, eventually, it's actually on the Supreme Court's website itself. That would be an absolutely fine source to use. But like I said, for consistency's sake, I'd like for everybody to get it from the Library of Congress, which is just as credible. And so, it's not even on the first page of results. So if I type, just add LOC to that, it brings it up to the first page. This is what we're looking. Oh, that's the wrong case. That's funny. The right website, but the wrong case. I think it's because I put DC on there instead of District of Columbia. Okay. I'll try it the other way. Obviously, sometimes you might have to spend, like 2 or 3 minutes looking for it rather than like 30 seconds, but it's because I didn't realize it was going to be that way with this case, but once in a while you do have trouble finding it in a basic internet search. So what we're going to do instead, probably good this happened because is we're going to go directly to the Library of Congress and search on there. Oh, and you know what? I forgot to share the screen. Yeah. All right. That's it. So it took us 5 minutes, but we found it. And then there's a way that you can download a PDF copy of it right here. And when you open it up, they all pretty much look the same when you open them up. And that's how you know you have the right source, is because it will look like this, if it ever loads. So while that one's thinking, I'm gonna look for something that I know that I can find. This case, Graham v. Connor, popped up top source, the very top one when I hit that LOC with it. But you'll notice that there's, that's, I think, the official transcript. Let's take the LOC off of it. This right here is also from a government source. It's the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, or FLETC. And it says Graham v. Connor. And if you pull it up, it is a summary. It is a brief. It is helping cops to understand, what it means for them, kind of thing. It is not what you should use as your source for this paper. You just need one source. You will need one source, and it will be the transcript of the case. And then there is also a component of your paper where you're going to have to cite the applicable constitutional amendment. But that'll be pretty easy because there's a website called like constitution.congress.gov, and that's where you get that from. But I kind of want to walk through this because this one's a bit more complicated. As you can tell, sometimes, like right now, they're having some kind of website glitch or something, so I don't know. There, see, I just had to try it more than once. But it says syllabus at the top, October term, just, the name of the case, the certiorari, which just basically means that they agreed to hear the case. Supreme Court doesn't have to hear cases. They only take, like 20%, I think, of cases that are presented to them to take. They try to pick the ones that they think, are in the most need of being decided at that level. We'll talk more about that when we get into that part of the class, but what's important to understand about a Supreme Court case is that it's not deciding guilt or innocence, it's deciding questions of law, whether or not a particular law is constitutional, or whether or not a particular principle should apply to a particular case, or how to apply things. So, for example, the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution says that if they want to search your property, right? If cops want to search your property, they have to have a search warrant, right? It sounds pretty cut and dry, but it says unreasonable. That word unreasonable implies that there may be times that the cops don't have to get warrants, right? So there are exceptions to the search warrant requirement, which we'll talk about in class later on. And the Supreme Court has played a big role in deciding what those exceptions are and how broad they are. And they have kind of, over the years, kind of evolved certain ideas, certain principles. And we'll talk about that more when we get into that section of the class too. But these Supreme Court cases, all of them that are on that list are kind of changing direction from what they previously had done. Either they were kind of hands off with it and now they're hands on as far as, something like that. This particular case that I looked up, it's not on your list, but it's the case that struck down the gun ban that they had in Washington, D.C. for like 30 years. And this is the case that declared that to be unconstitutional because the District of Columbia is federal. It is not in a state. It is a part of a federal territory. And so it was violating the Second Amendment whenever it outright prohibited anybody that lived in Washington, D.C. from having a firearm. And so that's what this case was about. It's not about whether the particular subjects in this case were guilty of breaking the law. It was about whether the law itself violated the Constitution. And there's other cases in your in that list that are the same way. Lawrence v. Texas, about they basically prosecuted two fellas for having relations, because it was against the law to have homosexual relations in Texas, and it struck down that law. So, Loving v. Virginia, I think, is a case that was about interracial marriage because it was illegal to marry somebody that was a different race from yourself in the 50s or 60s or whenever it was, and it struck down that law. So a lot of times it's about that. Sometimes, like in Graham v. Connor, it's about like reasonable use of force by police officers. That's why that's cited so much, is because it more directly applies to us. But it's not about whether a law was unconstitutional or not. It's about how to apply, whenever you're judging the actions of a police officer using force, you have to kind of understand that they don't necessarily have all the information. That's the Cliff's Notes version of that case, is that cops do the best they can with the information that they have, and just because later on it's proven that their understanding of things was incorrect, as long as their understanding at the time was reasonable based on the facts that they knew, you can't armchair quarterback it, and say, like, for example, if somebody, if you're dealing with a subject or whatever, and it's a tense kind of situation, and that subject reaches into their waistband and comes out like this, what do you think is about to happen, right? You're about to shoot me. But then it turns out they didn't have anything in their hand when they did that, right? You can't, expect the cop not to react to something that is like, an imminent threat, even if it turns out that it wasn't. So that's what these cases are about. And so when you actually write your case brief, that's the thing. There are these subheadings that have to be in there, and we'll talk much more in depth about that a little bit later, because your first assignment is to go and find this transcript right here. And once you have found it and it says the thing that this thing says, and it's not like this, right? It's like this. Then you copy this web address at the top, and then open up a new document. Paste it. And that's what you're going to turn in for your assignment. The reason that I'm doing it this way is because I want to make sure you have the right source before you write a damn thing, right? Because I thought that I had said it enough in class last semester, but I still had a handful of students that used the wrong sources. So there's going to be an assignment on Brightspace. Some of you notice that due dates have started to appear on Brightspace. Don't worry about the due dates for the quizzes. I mean, as far as don't try to take the quizzes before we cover the material, that would be kind of counterproductive. And those may get pushed out or moved a little bit based on how quickly we cover the material. Yeah. But
we will find next week, the Library of Congress, right?
yes, you must use Library of Congress. I am telling you where to go, what to get, and so this should be the fairly easy assignment. You saw my own struggles in finding that one case because for whatever reason they don't have, I guess, the right keywords in there for it to pop up in Google, or the algorithm is suppressing it. I don't know what the hell's going on there. But when I went directly to the Library of Congress and searched, I was able to find it. So you may have to spend 5 minutes, kind of searching around to find it. So don't give up and just go, oh, this one's good enough. I want that source. So find the link, copy and paste the link into a document, and then there's an assignment on Brightspace where you can turn that in. And it's going to be located under writing assignments. And if you scroll down, research paper source 1, and it's due Monday by midnight. All of my due dates that are on turnitin.com or Brightspace, I make them at midnight, and that way there's no confusion about it. I don't care if you have it by class time tomorrow, because we're not turning it in class, right? So it's midnight. And that way also I can remind you on Monday that this is due tonight, too. So anyway, you should be able to turn it in there. I don't have it on student view. There's a way to do that. I know there is. There it is. That way I can make sure it's working right. Okay, yeah, see, when you pop it, when you view it, you'll be able to turn it in down there. And if you're interested and you're feeling curious, you can actually read the dang thing, But at this point, I'm not requiring that. I just need to know that you can find the source, that you have the source, and that you have the link to the source, because you'll need that for your references. And this document that you submit, if you want, you can just make that into your paper later on, or, not. It doesn't much matter. It would also be probably a good idea for you to title this document with something that has your name in it, just so that, it'll come in on Brightspace under your name, but it's just a good habit to get into to make sure that your things are identifiable to you, just in case. So that being said, are there any questions about that? That's your first assignment. It's due Monday on Brightspace. And I guess your second assignment, if you want to call it that, I'm not giving you points for it, but it would also be a good idea for you to go ahead and set up turnitin.com and add the class and make sure that you can get in like that, because we will have the second part of this assignment will be due probably at the end of next week, which is where you're actually going to have your references page and your title page all made up with your subheadings and stuff like that. We'll talk about that on Monday. But you'll need to turn that next assignment and the one subsequent to that in on turnitin.com. So go ahead and set that up on Brightspace. This is now the correct information. I think on the first day of class, I told you I still had to update that. So that's available on Brightspace. or you can write it down. I'll leave it up there. Did anybody join us on? No, it's okay. So if anybody watches this on Brightspace, there's I can email out the copy of the thing to them. Did that make its way around the sign up sheet? Is it still working on it? Okay, that's fine. And like I said, I'll go more in depth into the expectations of the paper on Monday. I just don't want to do it too soon because I don't want you to turn in any writing on on this, just the link. So instead, we're going to talk a little bit about report writing because we are going to have a few, probably 2 or 3 report writing exercises throughout the semester that we'll have to do. I referenced this a little bit on day 1, but I kind of want to go over the expectations of what should be in a report. The primary purpose of writing a report is to document something. You know, it could be an action, it could be something you witnessed, it could be something like that. And it's important that you have relevant information in the report. It's also important that your report is as specific as it can be about the details. So, you know, in law enforcement reports, we are frequently talking to people and getting their side of the story. So I talked to the victim and they said he started it, and we talked to the suspect and he said she started it, or whatever, right? And it's, you know, we kind of get into that where we're talking to somebody and they're actually even telling you what somebody else said, and so it can get really confusing if in your report you start just saying what they said without saying that they said it, if that makes sense. Like, you know, it can get confusing. It's like, wait a minute, are you saying that you heard them say this? No, she said that he said, and sometimes that's literally in your report, that, victim said that the suspect said this, and it sounds really kind of clunky to write that down, but you have to do it that way to be precise, because it has to be clear to anybody that's reading the paper who did what and when. Similarly, using pronouns, and I'm not talking about like, the preferred pronouns or anything like that. I'm talking about, it's common in reports and stuff to where you'll say like, the victim told me that he blah, 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 blah. And that's fine if it's in the same sentence. But understand that in the law enforcement report, there are multiple people doing multiple things all the time. And so don't start a sentence with he said or she said, because somebody might get confused about who he is or who she is. And it, again, kind of sounds clunky when you're writing your report. Start like virtually every sentence with, Mr. Smith told me this, or whatever. But it's kind of how it has to go. So err on the side of precision, err on the side of more information if you're in doubt about anything like that. It's just a couple of things that I noticed last semester in some of my upper level classes that I piloted this idea in of report writing. And it was sometimes it was like I had to like mark it up and say, who is he, who is she, who are they, that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. So should still have it in the quick links here, of course not. Anyway, the reason that it's important that we write good reports is because it's going to go to court someday, most of the time. Either civil court, criminal court, you know, or you're defending yourself because somebody's actually suing you kind of thing. And so having those details written down helps aid your memory when you're preparing for trial, because that's going to happen like 6 months, 9 months, a year later, sometimes more than that, you know. And you've got to have it, you know, written down. So I fully expect when we do the report writing exercise, especially the first couple of them, that, you know, there's going to be a need for a lot of correction, you know, but that's why the first couple of reports, I'm going to have you just print a copy of it and bring it to class, and we'll just kind of go over it before it's due online. It also saves me from having to grade a train wreck, you know, doing it that way. So basically, you know, within the next couple of weeks, we'll have our first assignment for that, and just do the best you can, bring it to class, and then we'll sort it out from there. Luckily, this class isn't 30 kids like it normally is, so, you know, we're I think at 23 or 24, so it should work out. That being said, that's a good stopping point for me. So the sign up sheet, did everybody get their name on that? Okay, okay. So never mind, I'll do something else. It's not fair to you guys that have to stick around. So we'll do it this way. How about this? What if I don't have anything to write on the board with, and that's fine. What if you found yourself in a position where you needed an alibi and you needed to prove that you were here today? How might you do that?
Okay.
Yeah, you could take a selfie, you could take a photo, but what if you didn't realize you had to prove you were here until afterward? What if you had to prove you were here on the first day of class? What if I said you were absent? I counted you absent, you were here. What if
You told us today.
Right, yeah, if you took notes in class, that could be, you know, something that would at least suggest that you were here. Technically, you could copy that from somebody else. No. Witness, yes, witness. But do witnesses lie? What if the witness is your best friend? You know, are they credible? That kind of thing. I'm not trying to say that they're, you know, but that's good. You know, I recorded the class, you know, and I, you know, because sometimes kids aren't here. So I think we have one in quarantine. I can't remember if it's this class or the 11 o'clock class, but one of the intro students has had COVID and is in quarantine. So, you know, if you spoke in class or something during any of it, you know, maybe your voice is on here, you know, the camera's facing me, unfortunately, you know, but, you know, it's possible, maybe there could be some evidence on there, you know, but mostly it's what you talked about. Maybe, so, you know, maybe there's a picture of you, maybe there's, you know, a witness or something like that, that would suggest that you were here. It would be difficult to 100% prove it though, right? You know, after the fact, you know, maybe there's cameras somewhere, like, I don't think there's any security cameras on Beatty, but maybe there is, I don't know, you know, and if so, that could prove that you at least entered the building, you know, that kind of thing. Something else nobody suggested that just kind of popped into my head is it possible maybe that your phone could prove that you know, if they were able to get the right warrants or something like that, maybe they could, you know, because if your phone is on, technically, you know, it's communicating with the tower, and it's possible that maybe that they could get something like that, you know, especially if you, even though you're not supposed to, if you sent or received a message while you're in class or something, then that's definitely, you know, gonna be able to get recorded and stuff like that. So there's all kinds of ways to do it. And that's when you're writing reports and stuff, you got to think about how, if you're trying to prove that things did or didn't happen, that somebody was or wasn't there, that, you know, they did or didn't do a certain action. And so you've got witnesses, you've got, you know, photos, sometimes video, sometimes Sometimes you can do electronic search warrants and things like that to get like cell phone data or something like that. There's all kinds of different avenues that you can take. And in your report, you're going to have to, you know, kind of iron that out. So that killed another 5 minutes, and I think we're mostly done. So anybody that's already signed up and done, then go for it. Get out of here. Have a fantastic weekend.